like tonight, it's tradition for mayor to speak last. When I'm a council member on an issue like this, a lot of times I like to go first and just have it out. So this has been kind of challenging to sit here and bite my tongue while everyone else had their comments, but now it's my turn. Let me begin by saying that we're in a time now where we're being run by extremes. And doesn't matter which extreme, both accuse the other side of violating the Constitution, of not following laws, being the problem. And everybody seems to have forgotten a key point of what this country is all about. The basis of this country was government of the people, by the people, for the people, meaning citizen-driven policy. And that's one thing from the very first time I ever ran for this city council, I have always had in my platform, regardless, all elections that I've run, has been citizen-driven policy, not policy driven by City Hall, certainly not by Sacramento. And we've forgotten that. And that's kind of what's being lost in all this, in this process that's been set up by legislators who are amounting to dictators. And people really, that's the sad part tonight. This is truly the democracy. You're here, you get to face your elected officials and hear out of our own mouths what we're thinking. Do you know what the state legislators are thinking? Do you know what they're saying when they're passing these things? How some of them are condescending of all of you? You're all a bunch of NIMBYs, all the negative words. In fact, it's bothersome to me because notwithstanding the definition that the legislators gave to bad faith, the true definition of bad faith, according to the dictionary, is really negotiating with somebody in a deceptive way. One thing that I'm going to go through, my track record, I've been very consistent over the years. I've been very genuine about who I am and what I do. But in regards to some of the agencies that are writing us, I find it extremely ludicrous because they refer to themselves as YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard. Okay, well, that's all fine and good if they have representatives living in the neighborhood, but I would challenge them to identify people within their organization who actually live in that neighborhood. In that case, they're YISIMBY. It's yes in someone else's backyard is what their organizations are, and they need to be honest with that. They're the ones who are being deceptive and wrong. Let's talk about what the process has been and what we've lost, because the state in their infinite wisdom has decided they know better than we do, than certainly our citizens do. When I first got on city council, one of the tasks we were wrapping up when I got on city council was updating our general plan. And of course, one of the key things in that general plan is being respectful of neighborhoods, having development that integrates in a neighborhood. That came from citizen involvement and feedback from citizens. And suddenly we advance in time and none of that matters anymore. The general plan is really irrelevant in the context of these state rules. We don't care about that anymore. The next thing that came up, of course, after the general plan was a desire to build affordable housing. No state influence trying to push pressure that we have to build things a certain way, but it was a community-driven discussion. We had community members themselves who were coming out on both sides of the issue, people who wanted it and other people that had concerns about it, had different ideas about it. It was a multi-year process. But in the end result was a positive result for the community. It was our Jamboree development here by Courier Place, right over here on College Avenue. That was the end result. How did it evolve over the course of the debate? Because of feedback we received from people. One of the things that people said is a normal neighborhood is organic. It has seniors, it has families, it has people with disabilities. It's mixed. It's not any one group. So we started to inquire, how could we possibly integrate different groups in this? And we were told, well, you can't put seniors in with the families, but you could have different buildings there. So the end result, we have 2 buildings that are for families and 1 building that's for seniors, connected by a community center where it provided the opportunity for Jamboree to introduce intergenerational programming for children that have parents that are working. They can interact with the seniors. There was a lot of positives in that. Another thing that our community was big on that we got to push through it was sustainability. And guess what? That's a LEED development, a LEED certified development. How many of these affordable projects, especially coming out of the state now, are LEED certified? Probably none. But that's something we were able to negotiate with the developer because we had some control over saying these things. We didn't have the state just basically saying, rush this thing through and do it the way we say, under this cookie cutter approach that doesn't necessarily fit your community. We got a lot of positives in there. And I remember shortly thereafter, it was highlighted in a magazine as one of the good ways to do affordable housing. And so to say that unless you have this process, nothing's going to come through, that everybody's going to kill everything, it's a lie. It's a flat out lie. And the reality is the realities of the cost of housing are so much more complicated than build. We've built all these developments. By the way, how many developments have come through, unusual to what people have liked, but have still made it through our process even before all this? Pitzer Ranch, The Gables, Serrano, Town and Baseline. We've got the Intracore down over by Griswold's. We have a number of them. But guess what? When they came on the market, they were market rate. They were lower. I mean, Town and Baseline, I seem to recall, was 300,000 to 400,000. Go check the pricing on those now. It's up with the rest of the neighborhood. It's not curbing the increase in housing. This is a bunch of baloney we're being fed by people. Build, and the prices are going to go down. Maybe if you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got oodles and oodles of land to build houses, but in a town like ours where we're mostly built out and we just have pockets of infill, you're not even building these higher density developments isn't necessarily going to curb increases in housing costs. Especially another big problem that we have are investors. Investors are in there. And a perfect example, my mother was looking at a property she was interested in just a couple of weeks ago up on Padua. And she came to find out, even just as it was just listed, there were already 6 offers and several of them were cash. That's investors. That's investors moving in. When you have that competing in the market, that's driving up your market. That's maybe what the legislators should be focusing on if they want to address affordability, is how do we control the investors all coming in there, moving in and picking up all of these properties and not giving a chance for individual families and homeowners to have those properties. But no, we don't talk about that. These same legislators who you don't get to see their faces and hear their thinking, and you don't really get to look into their backgrounds, are also taking money from these very developers on how to make the process better for developers to make them more money. But are they passing off the savings on the people? Not so much. Let's talk about consistency, though. So going back to September 14th, 2021, there was a proposal to amend our inclusionary housing ordinance. Back up to, the other thing that happened, I mentioned we brought in Courier Place. There was also a desire to have some sort of a program to help people buy actually buy homes as opposed to rent homes. Citizens for the American Dream came out at that time, a citizen group, and they wanted us to explore ways. So that's where the inclusionary housing ordinance came from. And I will admit, I supported that in its first rendition. Over time, I learned a lot about it that I didn't like. For one thing, it came to realize that, we didn't put city money into that. The developers had to fund those units. And the way they fund the units is you give them density bonuses. So that's why, since we put that inclusionary housing ordinance, we're seeing more and more developments that are higher density so that the developers can make more money to be able to subsidize units to have the affordable element in there. The other thing that I came to find out is, we were told that we had to give, we had to make sure we allowed the people their equity. I kind of felt there should be a payback. If you benefit from a program instituted by the government, you should have to pay it forward to someone else. But we were told, no, you have to provide people equity so they can fix up their homes over time to be able to maintain them. Okay, we gave that to them, only to find out in the current future, one person who benefited from those units, it revealed to me that he doesn't have access to the equity to be able to get a loan. He said, if it weren't for the fact that my income's a little bit better than when I bought the unit and I can get an unsecured loan, which is a higher interest rate, but he said, I can move forward with my project, but not under equity on the house because I'm not able to access that equity. And then the last thing that I've come to find out lately is when we put these in homeowners associations, you add another level of, I'm sorry to say, for those of you who are in homeowner associations, bureaucracy that is out of control of those homeowners. And if the assessment dues go up for this homeowners association, or there's a legal case, in the case one of our developments had a legal case and they lost, and all the the homeowners are responsible for it. It's putting people that came in on moderate or low income in potential jeopardy that's out of our city control. So after learning some of those lessons, which you learn from being on council for a while, I was much more cautious. So again, going to September 14th, the decision was to amend the inclusionary housing ordinance and add low income, which requires an even larger subsidy than the moderate income. So if you go back and see what I just watched it today, because I wanted to remember what I said, and I gave the warning that this was going to have impact on future projects, that the density was going to go up. I mentioned La Puerta, I mentioned Clara Oaks, I mentioned several of them at that time. La Puerta was resolved because they were given the in-lieu fee. But because I was recognizing our problems in it, and we weren't even addressing some of the other problems I had with the inclusionary housing ordinance, I voted no on that. Consistent. The next thing, of course, that came was a housing element. For those of you who are upset about the housing element, I voted no on that too, because to me, it's also a ridiculous thing. You can put, just to the point, we had the housing element affected La Puerta. They didn't choose to do the most dense option. They just wanted to develop 55 units on that property, and that's their choice. Even with so it doesn't guarantee that you're going to build the huge number of units that they're representing through the housing element. Not to mention the state doesn't give you money to pay for any of that. It doesn't build anything, and it just creates this kind of consternation and frustration where people feel rejected, that they're going to a process that's pointless. So I voted against that, and at the same time, I haven't voted against all of the development in town, but I've expected some concessions, and I would have liked more from Trumark, I guess, but at least Trumark did take off a unit, which the current developer doesn't want to touch density. In fact, increased it, as we all know from the original proposal. And even was willing to make an improvement on like an entryway that's going to be available for people to be able to go to the sports park. And they were going to build a nicer entryway into there. They conceded some, things that actually cost them money. So I give that to Trumark, which I'm sorry, but I didn't see that from this developer. Again, also 1633, AB 1633 is a choice. It's a tool. It's legal. But not every developer chooses to use it, but they won't, City Ventures chose to use it. And so here we are even with that. To Councilmember Liano's point though, to me, the state needs to maintain and respect our local development authority. The one thing that, people who appreciate Claremont, they appreciate Claremont regardless of income level because of the kind of community we have, the character of this community. And at the point that the state just comes in and starts, shoving in all of these developments that don't fit the community, they're taking away people's choice of where they want to live. These kinds of developments, they're more for Westwood, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with Westwood. If you like Westwood, live there, but give people choices. And in as much as they're trying to build all this development, that's in my mind not going to change. We'll talk 10 years from now. We'll see where the prices go on this development 10 years from now. Are they lower? Have they stabilized? Or are they higher? I'm going to go with higher, because we're not seeing anything but market prices going higher. And again, a big part of that is investors, and we're not even addressing that before we're forcing all this development. To me, again, even with regards to the way these pieces of legislation are written, the way, what we use to identify environmental problems, it doesn't really identify the problems. They're not drafted to really get to the heart of the matter, to really identify the things. It's intentionally done that way. In some cases, because developers have influence. One thing I will say too, that my commitment to the citizens in these last elections when I've run, I only take local money from citizens. I haven't been taking organizational money. I don't take developer money. I don't take from outside people. I'm here for this community. I'm the only one on this council too that took on a fight. It was an expensive fight, maybe not a wise fight. We lost $11 million. I will concede that, but we had the citizen support. That was against our water company, and we saw a need to fight. At some point, that's what people expect from their elected officials. Not just to sit here and patronize people, but at some point, if there's something wrong, to fight the fight. And so we fought that battle. Unfortunately, at the cost of $11 million. It's ironic, and keep in mind, we didn't just go on our own. We didn't have to, but we put a question on the ballot for the residents about approving revenue bond financing, and they approved it at 72%. So we went in with the citizens' approval. But unfortunately, again, to the point about what happens with the courts aren't generally very favorable to cities, the way these laws are written. I mean, even the other one that falls into this category are the districting rules. Santa Monica did manage to get a lower court ruling in their favor against the state forced districting. But by the time it made it up to the Supreme Court, they didn't get it anymore. So that's the thing too. Even if we get it on a local level, there's still appeals. And by the time it gets to the California Supreme Court, it could be reversed against us. And at what cost? So it's not, there is a cost to this, is my point. And so as I cast my vote tonight, there are some who may say I'm fiscally irresponsible to be willing to take that kind of risk. But at some point, to prove to my citizens that I'm prepared to fight for you, I need to be prepared to do that. And I'm prepared to do that tonight. So bottom line, I object to this process. Again, the point is we have Larkin Place in town and several other permanent supportive housing developments that are approved under AB 2162. 2162 basically bypasses this process. Don't make us accessories to your development state. If you want to do it, fine, force it on the community, but you take responsibility for it. Don't bring it into a kangaroo court and put me in the embarrassing situation of having, really not having any right to say anything, because the way you've set up the rules, it's not in my favor to be able to question anything. Not like back in the day when, as I said, we did Courier Place and we actually were able to make some meaningful suggestions. It took longer, but we got it done and it did get built. To the point that people are saying this won't get built, that's a lie. That's a lie, and those are people who are dictators, bullies and dictators who just want to shove things down people's throat because it's their ideology, it's their agenda. To hell with everybody else. So let's be honest about that at least. And I'm going to be honest about that tonight when I say no to this proposal. So with that, I conclude my remarks. I appreciate some of you appreciate my remarks, but I'm going to hold consistent again. We don't outburst or applaud. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate all who participated. That's where I stand tonight. Thank you. Do we have a motion at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be happy to move adoption of the resolution, move the reading be waived, and the resolution be adopted and numbered. Oh, I apologize. And then concur with the CD director's determination on the CEQA.
And then I would like to add, could I ask that you amend the resolution to include tonight as the public hearing date in addition to the May 27th meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. With that, Councilmember Liano. Oh, I'm sorry, the resolution. I'm sorry. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Claremont, California, approving tentative tract map 84564 for the proposed subdivision of 2.67 acres of land for a 70-unit townhome condominium development on a property located at 840 South Indian Hill Boulevard. The applicant is City Ventures, and it will be as amended to include the 6/10 public hearing date as well as the May 27th public hearing date.
Motion by Councilmember Liano. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Stark. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Liano.
Yes.
Councilmember Reese.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stark.
Yes.
Councilmember Medina.
No.
Mayor Kalakai.
No. It passes on a 3-2 vote.